Hey there, vinyl community. I'm Gary, and this is Physical Format Rock and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning in. So this will be an album review, and the album that I would like to discuss is the reissue of The Chemical Wedding by Mr. Bruce Dickinson. So this album has been re-released as an album as opposed to CD and remastered and whatnot. Now this is the album that came out in 1998. Let me, before I get into it too much, let me show you what it looks like. There's the back of it. Once again, the front opens up. It's got some pictures. Got another painting. It's got lyrics, although I hate the way those lyrics are done like that because it makes it very difficult to read along. And the vinyl, it's double vinyl because of the amount of songs. So the first one is blue. It's got this pretty cool looking blue vinyl. And the second disc, which also has all this information on there and a discography. It is kind of a, I don't know, weird yellow or orange. Not sure what you would, I guess it's orange. I'm not crazy about the color of the second one. That blue is pretty cool. Anyway, so The Chemical Wedding is a solo album from Bruce Dickinson that he made during the time when he was out of Iron Maiden. As you know, during the 90s, Bruce Dickinson left Iron Maiden and was replaced by Mr. Blaze Bayley. So while Iron Maiden made a couple of albums, while Bruce was gone, they did the X Factor and Virtual 11. Bruce made a couple albums on his own. He'd already done some solo albums, but by this time, he started working with Reissue, and things started to turn around. He did this one called Accident of Birth, which I have talked about this before on the channel. This is an excellent album. And then he followed it up with this bad boy, The Chemical Wedding. This, of course, is a painting by William Blake, who was a poet and a painter in England during the late 1700s and early 1800s. That picture inside is also by him, and all these pictures on the back. You have maybe seen some of these before. They're quite famous. And he is a bit of an influence on the album and the themes that go along with it. It has religious type themes throughout it, but it's actually kind of more about different levels, different types of human nature that fall into these songs. This is very different than what Iron Maiden was doing at the time. This is a very heavy record, heavier than what Maiden was doing at the time. And this is a terrific way to hear the range of Bruce Dickinson. He sings fantastic on this album. This is a very strong album. Now that this is reissued on vinyl, I recommend this to people. Really, the first three tracks, King and Crimson, Chemical Wedding, the title track, and The Tower. You know, you can look those up online if you would like. And basically, if you like those first three songs, you're probably going to like this album. If you don't like those three, then you're not going to like it. This doesn't have all of the technical aspects of Iron Maiden. You know, it doesn't have too much of the progressive flair that Iron Maiden was kind of doing at that time. I find this to be a much stronger album than I do Fear of the Dark or No Prayer for the Dying, which was the last two albums that Bruce had made with Iron Maiden before he left. Not that I don't like those albums, I just don't think they're really that strong, and I think this album here is pretty strong. This is better than a lot of Iron Maiden albums, in my opinion, and I love Iron Maiden. But this album and Accident of Birth are very good. If Accident of Birth, once that goes on to vinyl, I will be picking that up also. Happy that I picked this up. It, you know, it may sound a little strange if you're not familiar with it when you first put the needle down and you hear a little bit of that down tuning on the guitars. You'll be like, what is this? As it picks up, as it progresses through it, you will get into it. You'll like it. Adrian Smith is also on this album, just like he was Accident of Birth. Now, he only co-writes a couple of songs on this album, but his influence is felt in the guitar work itself. He does a lot of soloing. He does some soloing with Reissue, who also co-wrote a lot of material on here with Bruce. So you definitely can hear Adrian Smith on here. He's got some good playing on this album too. So it definitely has an Iron Maiden flair, but without like the galloping bass, that type of feel. This is a more kind of just heavy, in-your-face album. And like I said, Bruce is in fine form, fine lyrical form on this album. Some of his earlier works were not necessarily that great lyrically, and some of the later stuff of Iron Maiden, some of his songs were a little bit silly. I realize he doesn't write all the lyrics in Iron Maiden, but on here, it's strong. It's a kind of, you know, heavy lyrics that you would expect from Bruce Dickinson, and the heavy music to go along with it. So it's out now. Like I said, if you're not familiar with Bruce's solo work, check out a couple songs off of it. I would show you this, but I'm sure I don't know how easy that is to read the track listing on here. It sounds good. My only complaint was the original recording was a little murky sounding. They have eliminated a little bit of that. It's still kind of murky at times, but for the most part, it seems to work. So there it is. The Chemical Wedding by Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden is out, and it's been out for a while now. So go check it out. I'm Gary. This is Physical Format Rock and Roll. Remember, I am on Twitter and Facebook. You can check me out there. Until the next time, my friends, I will see you down the road.